I'm Patrick. I was born and raised in good old Macon, Georgia, by my wonderful mother and um, my dad. He was definitely present. Not always a good thing, but he was there. Um, and like Uncle Pat said, it was a little wild around our house sometime. A lot of the time. I remember like one of my earliest memories was I would always get in trouble at school or after school. And like, um, if I had gotten in trouble, it was I had to wait in my room until dad got home to handle the discipline. And like, if it was 6 o'clock when he got home, I was probably good. You know what I mean? But as the evening wore on, whatever punishment I was going to get worse because he'd been somewhere drinking. Um, so there was a lot of that. I'm not saying I didn't need some discipline and maybe deserve some whoopings because I did a lot. But yeah, and maybe spent a few nights at the dining room table sleeping because I wouldn't eat my food. So, anyways, I say all that to say I was a handful, may have been a little rebellious, but a lot of that. Um, of course, there was probably some emotional whatever going on, but I also I have an older brother who's awesome. He's 4 years older than me. He was the good one, and so therefore, and so therefore, I just kind of took on the title of the bad one, and so I guess it worked for me. If attention was what I was getting plenty of it. Um, so, anyways, that kind of carried over just into adulthood. But one significant moment was when I was about 8 years old, third grade. My parents legally separated. And I think it was for about a year and a half, maybe. And then they reconciled. And like life prior to that split was a little wild, you know what I mean, with my dad's alcoholism. But then, unbeknownst to any of us, um, during that separation, he had started smoking crack. And so when they got back together, we were living with a full blown crackhead. And he had an ultra successful moving company here in Macon. So like most people who smoke crack don't have enough money to smoke too much crack. If there's, you know what I mean? So the unfortunate part was he was a well financed crackhead. You know what I mean? So there weren't very many limitations to his drug use. So with that came a lot of like, he was medically diagnosed with drug induced paranoid schizophrenia. So like if he was high, he was crazy. And like, a scary brand of crazy. Like, imagine the worst paranoia you could imagine, and that was it. So that was an adjustment period. So I guess I was maybe 10-ish when he moved back in. And so we lived that for about 2 or 3 years. And then during this time I'd always been brought up around 12-step groups, meetings out in Ayati. And we actually had the only group in the country called Out the Kids. So I started doing some of the 12-step stuff when I was like 6 or 7. Thanks to my Uncle Pat sponsoring the group and babysitting all of us during the meetings. But that was really good. It gave me an exposure to like these recovery concepts and these recovery ideas. And like, so I think it was good. But in the background, there was no application. I was a child, you know what I mean? But in the background, there was still all this tumultuous craziness going on. But anyway, so my folks, by 13, I was the Georgia State Alateen representative, which was cool. But somewhere in that time frame, I kind of started smoking weed a little bit. And we find out I like getting home. So That's what I did. I started smoking weed a little bit, and then I started working summers on the truck. My dad owned a moving company, so during the summers I would work on the truck and you know make lots of money and smoke weed with all the guys. You know what I mean? That was it was awesome. I had the best 13-year-old life ever. And then I went back to school for the school year and was like, oh wow, I'm really broke. It's hard to support this weed habit with no money. So I started selling weed when I was about 14. And then but it was just like a hobby just to be able to have weed. And but then that summer when I was 14 rolled around and I was working on the truck and selling weed, and I was like, wow, this money thing's pretty cool too. So I was smoking weed and making money. And by 15, like I went back to school, but I was like more focused on making money. So um, I have an older brother. And so I hung out with an older crowd. And there was other stuff going on. By this time, we had gotten into like Lortabs and opiates and all kinds of pills. And it was around 15 when I met Crystal, my first baby mama. And um, so yeah, it was it like it just progressively turned into selling harder and harder drugs. And so by 16, I was selling. Oh, well, I moved out a couple months before my 16th birthday. Not really moved out. It was more just like I left and never came back home. You know what I mean? And I dare anybody to stop me. You know what I mean? So, um, anyways, by 16, I was selling Oxycontin. Um, and like, I at the time I thought I was like the luckiest kid alive because I looked up on this pharmacy connection where like somebody who worked in the pharmacy was my connection. And so I was getting a lot of pills for really cheap and making a lot of money. Um, and then when I was 16, I got busted with like 60 something Oxycontin 80s. They took all my money, seized my car, but I was still a juvie, so they couldn't take me to jail. So they let me go to my mom. And then that was just a slap on the wrist. It was like, you know, it wasn't a big deal. They gave me drug court. But time goes on, a couple years goes by. Crystal gets pregnant with Kalia, my daughter. 3 months into her pregnancy, we get a call one night saying that my dad had been in an accident. They thought he'd been hit by a car. We went down to the emergency room and he died a few hours later. Um, and there's some suspicious circumstances surrounding the whole accident incident. Um, there were quite a few Bibb County sheriffs at the scene when whatever happened. Um, but anyways, needless to say, it was traumatic to lose him in that way so sudden while my first child was, on the way. And all I remember of his funeral is like me sitting at some tree, just like smoking cigarettes and nodding out. I don't really, and there was a lot of people there, but I don't really remember anything else. And so that happened. And then Kalia was born. About a year later, she was taken by defects. Uh, about another year later, I was arrested and charged with a conspiracy to obtain narcotics by fraud. By then, we had this whole scam going where we were writing fake prescriptions, lots of them, and so sat in jail. Me and my brother were bunkmates. It was a nice bonding time for us. My poor mother had to come visit her only two children on the planet in the same little visitation window. Um, but anyways, I was there for about 6 months. We were bunkmates. I got out, and then I was clean for maybe about a month and a half, and then I relapsed. And that began the next 12-year run of anything and everything that you could imagine. About 6 or 7 years into that, my precious son was born. And somewhere in there, I also added meth to the mix. I don't really know where. So, like, I was constantly doing opiates, which are a downer, and doing meth, which is an upper, just always trying to chase the middle so that nobody would know. And, you know, so that's what I did for a while. And then, let's see. Oh, yeah. And then they make the pills impossible to get, next to impossible to get. So the natural progression was heroin. And so heroin came to town, and I was already well entrenched in the selling pills game, had the clientele. And so, and it also helped that I was a white boy, because I had access to a different, more affluent customer base, as it were. So, so I did that, sold heroin for about 3 or 4 years, and then and all that goes with it. You know what I'm saying? And then one day we were at KFC on Forsyth Road, and right after we ordered our food, we were standing there, and two people walked up and asked if they could talk to us, and I was like, about what? And they were like, well, we're so and so and so and so from the FBI. We have a few questions for you. And I was like, sure, have a seat. And so they sat down with us. Needless to say, I'd lost my appetite, so I didn't eat anything. But they were basically asking us if we knew somebody. Yes, we knew them. And then they were like, well, would you go down to our office and talk to us for a little while? And I said, can my attorney be there? And they said no. And I said, well, then no. And they said, well, next time we see you, you'll be leaving in handcuffs. I said, okay. And sure enough, about 2 months later, me and Christina, Chase's mom, we were at my mom's house, and we got arrested by the FBI there, in front of my children at my mom's. But before we left, before they walked us out, my precious mother was like, hold on, in tears. It was like, can we pray first? So somehow or another, I wish somebody had gotten it on film, or it had been on Ring doorbell cam or something. But we're out there, me and Christina both in zip tie handcuffs with 4 FBI agents, my mother, my stepfather, and Chase and Kalia, all standing in a circle praying before they take us off to jail. Anyways, so yeah, that happened. And anyways, they let us right out. They wanted us to tell on some people, and I wasn't willing to go that route. So a few weeks later, they came back and locked us up again. And so sat in county jail for about 6 months. And then this is where things start to get good. I was desperate to get out of jail. I just wanted out. You know what I mean? And but I had these the charges were conspiracy to obtain and distribute a kilo or more of heroin. Big time charges. Mandatory minimum 10 years with a maximum term of up to life in prison. And so I was like, but I was clean for the first time in a decade. So I was finally like thinking clearly. I'd done the whole detox in jail thing, which is a blast. If you hadn't done that, I highly suggest it. It's awesome. So it was horrendous. But anyways, so I was finally having some clarity for the first time in a really long time, and I just wanted out. So I was desperate. So the only way out was to agree to go to treatment for a year. And so my brother made some calls, found a place called the Jericho House up near Helen. And before he hung up the phone with the guy, like we didn't really have a way to pay for it or anything. We were just kind of hoping somebody would help. The guy, Larry McKenna, the founder of the program, prayed with my brother. And I think that's all it took. You know what I mean? And it had kind of been decided for me. That was where I was going. So anyways, they facilitated all that. I got out, went to Jericho House, and I thought it might have been a cult. Like, seriously. I went from like where I identified, if somebody had asked me, I identified as agnostic. And so it was a little bit of culture shock. I was not happy to be there, but even going in, I had kind of made a promise to myself and my uncle and my mom and my brother and like my kids that I was just going to try it. You know what I mean? I was just going to be all in on whatever they were selling. I'm buying it. And like worst case scenario, I can always go back to what I know. You know what I mean? I can always go back to that old life, and I'm pretty good at that. But best case scenario, maybe something good happens. Maybe it'll help me when I go to my sentencing. Maybe I'll get less time. You know what I mean? That was a real consideration. Like, do good here. It'll help me not go to prison. Yes, I'll do good here. But anyway, so I got in there, and I just there was an adjustment period where like I didn't like where I was, and I could point out all the reasons why it was such a terrible place. But it wasn't too long into it. Larry McKenna, the founder, pulled like in group one day, was like, he singled me out and was like, it's okay to have a problem, but it is not okay to be a problem. Because I was like recruiting everybody to like, I was trying to incite a riot. So anyways, I got really close to getting kicked out, but finally, I don't know what it was. It might have been something in the water. I don't know, but it kind of started rubbing off on me a little bit. I kind of started feeling a little bit different, doing some of the things they told me to do. Journaling, daily moral inventory, just kind of working on things, like working on myself and working on these attitudes and these ideas that I had about God specifically. And one of the breakthrough moments for me was like, I was so mad at God. I was so angry at God. And I had an endless list of reasons why. Like, there's no way he's real, but even if he is, he's not a good God. You know what I mean? So, but I knew that I hated God. Like, I knew that. I felt it within me. It was undeniable. You know what I mean? And then something in my logical mind was like, hold on. You claim to not believe in God, but how do you hate him? Like, both things can't be true. So which one is it? And so, it was pretty much, I felt the anger and I knew that was real. So that was enough to know that, okay, even if I deny it, there's something in me that believes there is a God. And so that was enough for me to just that was enough for me, just starting with knowing that I believed, even though I hated him. That was enough. And in hindsight, it's like, how beautiful is it that God can use something like that to draw you in? You know what I'm saying? Like, how good is that? But at the time, it was just like, it was just a realization. But then I started like really diving deep because then I at least had that belief to hang on to. So then I could start buying into everything that they were selling, and like walking through everything that they taught and their inner healing and digging up some of this old stuff and praying through it and working through it and just doing all of that. I really started to see God move in my life personally, not only in my heart, but in circumstances. Like going into treatment and for years leading into that, I had ruined my teeth. I mean, it was terrible. And so one of the things that happened while I was there at Jericho was I went to it was during COVID, so we didn't have any family visitation. So I was trying to game the system to get a family visit. You could have medical, they couldn't deny you medical stuff. So I made this dentist appointment just so that my mom and the kids could come get me and take me to it. But I knew that there was no way we could afford all this dental work. Went to the appointment, had a great visit with them, and was like, thanks, it's been nice. They dropped me back off. And a couple weeks later, the doctor called my mom on a Friday night and was like, did Patrick get his dental work done? It's really important. His is the worst case I've seen for somebody his age, like ever. Well, they talked for like 45 minutes, and I was just like, oh, that was really sweet of her. Why don't you mail me some thank you cards so I can send her a card just thanking her for her time? And so I did that. I handwrote some thank you cards, mailed them out to her, and about another 3 or 4 weeks went by, and she called again. She said, has Patrick had his dental work done yet? And my mom said, no, we're still trying to find a place and find a way to pay for it. And so anyway, she said, well, how much can y'all come up with? And so like maxing out multiple credit cards and borrowing from Peter and Paul and everybody else, we were able to come up with like roughly $10,000. And she said, well, I've already talked to the oral surgeon. Both he and I are willing to do our work pro bono. So I ended up getting $22,000 worth of dental work done while there at Jericho. I mean, just like God just showing up, you know what I mean? Because I don't know if anybody's experienced that, but not being able to smile is very it's very defeating. You know what I mean? It's hard to be happy when like the sign of your happiness makes you unhappy. You know what I'm saying? So it's like it's ugly. But anyway, so that happened there. So like I'm seeing God showing up, not only in like changing my heart about things and people and situations, but like showing up in real life stuff, like dental work. You know what I'm saying? Like, okay, you know what I mean? Maybe I hate him a little less. That was kind of cool. Appreciate it. Big homie. Anyway, so that happened while I was there. But then the fun part. So I completed my year of inpatient treatment there, and I graduated on December 20th. And like I'm walking in this new life, I'm this new creation. Like, and I still had to come home and go to court for my charges that were pending. And so I was finally getting back to being there for my kids and being a dad. And I come home after having been gone for a year and a half. I come home for a few months, and then I go to court, and they sentence me to 20 months in federal prison. And so here I am, a year and a half clean, trying to live for the Lord and like experiencing this new spiritual freedom and this newness of life. And like oh, by the way, the treatment center that I went to their primary industry was a moving company. Y'all remember me referring to all those summers I worked doing moving? Well, I kind of got back in it and noticed, wow, I'm pretty good at this. So while during
and I'm not high.
Yeah, and I'm not yeah. So at the end of my time at Jericho, like God had kind of, you're always praying through what's next for me. Where are you being led? God, where are you leading me? And like I was being led to open a moving business. Like he even gave me the name of the business and told me what it was supposed to be. But all these plans and all these like I'm eager to get out and hit the ground running, so excited, on fire for all of it. And then I still had to go to prison. So I came home for about 3 or 4 months. I was scared to death of coming back to Macon because, well, if you know anything about Macon, it's Macon. Yeah. and not to mention, I'd never done anything except for the worst things in Macon. So I didn't know the people. I didn't know the places. So I voluntarily enrolled in intensive outpatient with River's Edge. So when I got home, that filled a bunch of my time. Um, but this dream of this moving company thing was all the way on hold. So I had to turn myself in on April 15th, good old tax day. And so I got in there, and it's a 20-month sentence in the feds. They don't have a parole system. So you don't get it's not like you get 10 years and you only do 2 and you get 8. No, in the feds, you get 10 years and you're going to do about 9 of them. You get some credit for good behavior. That's it. And it's about 10%. So anyways, on a 20-month sentence, even with good behavior, typically I would be gone or should be gone for 18 months. We got them to acknowledge and give me credit for the 6 months that I had been in Bibb County LEC. So that knocked that 18 months down to 12 months. And then I also got 6 months in the halfway house, which is basically you just sleep there and you go to work, and it's here in Macon. So I was able to see my family. So that knocks it down to, I was only gone for 6 months. So on this 20-month sentence, I ended up only being away from home, like in prison, for 6 months. And then, so I've been home now. I finished up at the federal halfway house at Dismas, January 2022. So I've been home now about 26 months or so. And since then, it took me a little while to kind of actually start to put the pieces in place to put the pieces in place to actually call myself a business owner. But I kind of started putting the word out, what I was doing as far as the business goes. And just, I don't know, probably a year and a half or so ago, my Uncle Pat and I met at Waffle House, which is where all our most important business meetings take place. And he just kind of sat me down and he was like, "Are you sure you want to do this moving thing?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm going to do it." And he was like, "Okay," because he had seen it. He's seen it with my cousin who's in the moving business. He'd seen it with my dad who's in the moving business. And a lot of times it's kind of a nightmare. But anyways, he was kind of like, "All right, well, if that's what you're going to do, we're going to start doing it." And so each day I would come to work out here with him, and he would just kind of gently guide me and nudge me just by like in passing, just asking, "Hey, have you done that thing? Did you get that done? Are you still working on that? You need some help with that?" You know what I mean? Each day, just not major pressure, just kind of doing things each day, something a little bit to work towards that goal of opening a business. And so now, after a year and a half or so, it's an actual business. I view it as like, it's also my ministry. It's where I get to kind of share with people my story. A lot of the guys that work with me are guys that are in recovery or guys that need recovery. I think it works. You know what I mean? And what better for them than to see an example of what new life looks like. You know what I mean? And to be accepted right where they're at. So it's also really cool to make some money while I'm at it. So that's helpful to be able to catch up on all the bills from 15 years ago that they're still calling about. Yeah, so I mean, that kind of brings y'all up to speed a little bit. And yeah, I'm just grinding away each and every day. So that hustler's mentality that I developed is really paying off. So yeah, for Jesus, yeah. So So yeah, that's what I'm doing. I I don't know. I think it's a pretty cool story. Sometimes I wish it had happened to somebody else because there's been parts of it that haven't been so much fun. But I'm so grateful for the person that I am today. I'm so grateful for my relationship with the Lord, my relationships with my family. I'm so grateful for like where my business is at and where it's headed. I just really, I want to make sure that I'm staying dialed in. You know what I mean? As far as like, um, I want to make sure that I'm continuing to do what I'm doing for all the right reasons.
Man.
Um, and so I try to, as best I can, balance. You know, um, I just try to lead with my heart. You know what I mean when it comes to this business stuff, and hopefully people see that. Um, and I think it seems to be working pretty well. You got a question?
I want you to tell them how you enter jobs.
Uh,
How do
oh
you
yeah.
move in-
Yeah, it is pretty cool. Sometimes it catches people off guard, but one of the things I kind of stole it from the treatment center that I was at, where they had a moving business. At the end of every job, they required us to pray with the customer, and at the time, it was like, seriously. But now, that's something we do at the end of every single job. We pray with the customer, and they love it, and I love it. We love it. It's really special. Like sometimes I don't, it's really cool. And I don't know. It is a heck of a way to end a job, especially the jobs that really suck, where like something went terribly wrong. You know what I mean? You pray with somebody at the end of the day like that, and it's hard for anybody to walk away bitter. You know what I mean? So it's also a good business strategy. Just if anybody needs to steal that, you can pay me later. The God thing. It is. It is. It's the God thing.
It's a good, yeah.
Yes. I have a whole box full of 5x7s. They about this big, not this big. Yes, but I'll grab some for sure.
I'll put them in the break rooms.
Absolutely. I'd love that.
I think you ought to tell us the name of your business.
Oh, the name of the business is The Spirit Moves. Yeah, it's that.
Oh, cool. Spirit Moves. I
Yeah.
like that.
And the slogan is "Let the Spirit move you." So yeah, so
That's right.
when people are scrolling through looking for movers, I'm pretty sure like if you see it, if you know, you know what I mean. So yeah, and that name was as I don't know, as weird as it feels to say this, it was absolutely God given. It was divinely inspired.
That's right.
I was given that name while I was journaling, and like, what are the odds that that name had not been used by a moving company ever? You know what I mean? That I got out and we did like a name search and it was available. Like what? So yeah.
Just think about what it is that you're witnessing. You're witnessing to a lot of people. A lot of people.
Trying.
And his cousin's got a movie called A Master Movie,
Yeah.
which is also spirit driven. Also, yeah. One of the things that I had a lot of concern about him going into the moving business because I'd seen the worst there was in the moving business, and so I was trying to figure out how serious he really was. And what pushed me over the top, I don't know if you know it or not, and actually pushed his brother into getting back involved in it, was the ministry part.
Mhm.
Yeah, because the number one problem in the moving business, and Laney is in the moving business because her son's in it also, is labor.
Good help.
Good help.
Mhm.
Okay. And so, one of the key things is that what's going to make you different from everybody else, because that's the number one problem is labor and getting good labor. And he said, well, that's the whole reason I'm doing it is because it's ministry. That I see this as a ministry. That's what pushed me over the top of coming in and going. And that's what really brought his brother Rick back in and became an advisor to this whole thing too. And so, you know, I'm most of y'all know me well enough now, that I'll help somebody if one helps himself. But I'm a red personality, so I'm pretty straightforward, and I want to find out whether it's real or not. And I basically told him, I said, I'm not doing it for you. I said, I know how to set up the business. I know how to do all this sort of stuff. I'm gonna give you the things to do, and all I would. He said gently. I don't know if I'll say gently. Sometimes I'd say, have you done this? And he said, well, no. I said, well, let me know when you've done that. And I'd go back in my CPA practice, et cetera. So he's learned the hard way of what it is to run a business. And same way his brother did. Somebody else can't do it for you, can you, Patrick?
No. And I don't have enough to pay them to.
That's right.
It's big money problems.
All right. So and this is the time to ask some questions. If you've got any other questions about some of the stuff that was going on. So,
So moving and making, have you run across people that you knew from before you went to treatment?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But I mean, it's not really intentional, but they know where I stand. You know what I mean? And I try, and I don't. It's not like that I'm intentionally off-putting to them, or anything of the sorts. But like, it reminds me of when I was messing up. I would tend to isolate and stay away from certain people that were doing certain things. And so it's really a problem that fixes itself. You know what I mean? If I run across somebody, it doesn't get weird. At least for me, it doesn't. You know what I mean?
Because you show them Jesus.
Yeah. So,
Your light shines.
but
His light shines.
yeah, and I hope that they, you know what I mean? They can call me anytime. My phone number's plastered everywhere. Yeah. So, but yeah, that's happened a few times. And at the same time, there's some people from that old life that I get to bump into, and we're both on the other side of it. And we're and it's kind of like, oh, what's up? So you made it. You know what I mean? Like, isn't it pretty good over here? Yeah. So, but there's a lot of them that don't make it, and it's just sad. You know what I mean? There's, I guess there's always a little bit of survivor's guilt, but I mean, I don't know.
have you found that so this old crowd that you're almost like an attraction? Do they actually gravitate to you and see how you're doing, et cetera? Or are they just kind of feeling you out? What?
Well, they recognize it, and they are kind enough to acknowledge it. So I do, on a fairly frequent basis, get encouragement from people, whether they're clean and sober now or not. So that's pretty cool. But I think the coolest part is, even for those that aren't, they know that I am, and maybe I'm a safe place for them when and if they're ready. You know what I mean? And I'm readily accessible. Like,
They see hope.
For sure. They see a lot of hope right here. So serious.
yeah, I was a little turned. It was a little wild there for a minute.
And you brought a few of the guys into our men's luncheon here on Wednesday, et cetera. So he's also, you go to Celebrate Recovery quite a bit. And so, part of this whole thing is that when you see somebody that's come through it, it's almost like a magnet. They say, if he can do it, then maybe I can do it. So they kind of watch which way he's going. So do you sometimes feel like you're on a plane where everybody's looking, waiting for you to fall?
Not necessarily that they're waiting for me to fall, but I maybe I think like that a little bit. I don't know if it's just arrogance or maybe it's some healthy accountability. You know what I mean?
There you go.
I've taken on this role. Like I'd mentioned that as a kid I identified as the bad one, and now I identify as like the one, chosen. Yeah. I mean, like, for real, I got plucked up out of a pretty dark place. And it wasn't because I really don't even understand the why behind the what. I'm just super grateful. And so, yeah.
It's called you had a lot of pray and people pray.
Yeah, I believe that. I believe that wholeheartedly.
It wasn't just in the last couple of weeks. You had a phone call or somebody reached out to you because they saw a picture of somebody who resembled him with a mutual friend or whatever. They were kind of in the night scene and they were calling, checking in with you. Are you all right?
Yeah.
You don't?
Oh, yeah. They said, how did you get Patrick Dews to go to a bar?
Yeah.
It wasn't me. But anyway, like, that wasn't even me, but okay.
But that's, you know.
But I mean, I think the point you're making is it's pretty well known what I'm about and what my new life looks like. And so hopefully nobody sees it as like a better than kind of thing, because it's certainly not. It's just like I might be a little luckier or something. I don't know what it is. But
I'd like to point out that for 32, 33 years of Patrick's life, you weren't going to tell him to do anything that he didn't want to do. Go anywhere, he would, there just what happened. He was going to fight you tooth and nail. I don't care who you were. You could be the president, the principal, it didn't matter. So going to the treatment center at Jericho, he told us all, I don't want to go. And I almost threw I was like, I remember talking to Mom saying, this is Patrick we're talking about. I don't think we're going to be able, even though I got the approval from the guy, he's on a scholarship. It's free. They're going to let him go. It took, and even the first couple of months while he was there, Larry McKenna called me multiple times. I just don't know if this is going to work, Rick. I just don't know if he's just not participating. So for that light bulb moment to happen, where today he accepts correction. Today he comes for advice. And he won't make a move without asking Pat first. Sometimes me, Mom. He goes to wise counsel. This is a new creature right here.
Amen. Amen.
32 years, you broke a mold, and I'm proud of you.
thank you. Go ahead.
That was part of what my question was going to be, because you said you were so angry because of the early years of your life.
Mhm.
Did you actually do any what we would traditionally call therapy or counseling, or was it a supernatural move of God that broke that?
Okay. So growing up, I had all kinds of therapy and stuff, but to no avail. But I do think I'm super grateful though, because I think it did heighten my emotional intelligence. But as far as a supernatural move of God, it was not a burning bush moment.
Uh-huh.
It was a love that was slowly built, like, and a trust that was like slowly, like there were these things that were happening that like slowly I came to believe. It was not a burning bush moment. I wish it had been. That probably would have been way easier. You know what I mean? But no, for me, it was a slowly over time. I was just, it became an evidence-based truth. Like it became undeniable based on what I was experiencing, in my own heart and like in the lives and relationships with everybody around me. Slowly over time.
I can remember, because Sissy and I are so close, I knew everything that was going on, heard every story, lived it with her and with them. And I can remember watching him and talking to my husband Jimmy about it and saying, can you see the changes? And they were gradual. I mean, it was like a different person every time we would go for a visit. Every time we would go, once he got up into Jericho House, every time when he got home and I would see him, it would be just like another shell falling off. Or, it's just like, okay, that's gone. That attitude's gone. He's, the way he dealt with his kids, the way he listened, it was just, like he said, it was gradual and it was awesome.
Yes.
Yes.
I have, while I was listening to you, it dawned on me, I had forgotten, but you moved a friend of mine to Oklahoma.
Oh yeah, the McCulloughs.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I texted her and I said, he's giving his testimony now. She sent this back. This is a testimony to his word. She said he was wonderful. He gave his testimony to us while we were in Oklahoma. And it was so powerful. Praise God. So
Yeah.
that's what because
Thank you. Tell her I said hello.
Patrick,
Yes.
did it ever dawn on you when you were talking about your relationship with God, how you didn't do it this way, that way? God was always in charge.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I had put myself in some pretty dangerous situations. So it's there, that in and of itself, certainly had a lot of his protection. And,
Yeah, once he was at the lake house and these guys came over to the lake house and literally were going to kill your wife because you didn't have some drugs, didn't have some money or something like that. And yeah, you remember that?
no.
Oh, I do. And it basically, I thought that was going to scare him into reality, but it didn't. And if you saw the Patrick of before, you would always see him with dark glasses on. You could never see his eyes, and he was only there for a moment, in and out. We'd have family get together, that sort of stuff. It was no relationship. You were so isolated by yourself, and lots of prayer. And now, when you see him, I did drop several hints if I need to get rid of the dark glasses. He liked the dark glasses. I said,
They look cool.
I said, but if you're going to a business where people need to trust it, they need to be able to look into your eyes. And I'm telling you, it's made such a huge difference because this guy is a very lovable guy. Okay, if you can actually look into his eyes and speak to him, etc. And you hid from that for all those years. It was always dark glasses, always hiding, never looking at you in the eyes, etc. So yeah, some of us that have lived through this sort of thing, this is a miracle. Period. And I always knew that the whole problem was that for him to do anything, he had to be in agreement. He had to understand it. Even that little rebellion thing at age 6, the whole problem, the only thing was he didn't understand what they were asking him to do, and they wouldn't stop and explain it to him, and so he was refusing to do it.
Yeah, I need to know the why behind the why.
Or if he felt there was an injustice done,
Oh yeah.
and most of the time he felt there was an injustice done.
Or if it was
I'd be the sacrificial lamb. Yes.
if it was vegetables.
Oh, no.
Oh yeah, I didn't like vegetables either.
It was many nights, and he briefly said on it earlier. He sat at the table. Dad made him sit at the table until he ate the vegetables, and come morning, he'd still be sitting at the table.
Sleeping at the table.
Those vegetables did not get touched. I'll be pleading with him. Just take one
I didn't even have to eat all of them. He just wanted me to try everything on my plate. Not doing it.